How many of you have been in this exact situation? You finally get home after a day that's left you feeling totally drained. Maybe it was work, maybe school, or just life in general wearing you down. Or your thinking is, I've got an hour or two to myself. I'll finally get to game. You sit down, ready to pick something from the long list of games you've been meaning to play, and yet you just sit there, scrolling. Nothing feels quite right. You can't decide, even though you know this time is precious. That pressure to make this little bit of free time count actually starts to work against you. And then maybe you end up watching YouTube or browsing Netflix, and before you know it, that precious hour has slipped away and you're left feeling frustrated and disappointed. Now, why does this happen? It's something I've been experiencing myself, and it's something I wanted to talk about because I think a lot of us are in the same boat. For me, things have been especially tense recently. I'm going through a lot of changes. My relationship broke down, I'm selling the house, and I've got to find a new place to live. So naturally, life feels a bit unsteady. And because of everything going on, my time to game has been more limited than ever. When I do have a small window of time, I find myself putting so much pressure on that time to count, and that pressure is enough to paralyze you. It's like staring down at your Dota 2 hero roster before a match and trying to decide, all right, what's the perfect pick here? What's going to lead to a win, maximize the fun, make the most of this time? And then you get caught up thinking about counters, synergies, all the things you could do, and instead of just jumping in, you hesitate. There's this growing weight of expectation that makes even the simplest decision feel monumental. It's a kind of analysis paralysis. Our brains struggle when there's too much choice, especially when we're already a bit worn out, which, let's face it, many of us are these days. And if you've been gaming for a while, like I have, your library has probably grown faster than you can keep up. Backlogs full of titles picked up during sales, games recommended by friends, games you've been told you should play because they are must-plays in the gaming community. It's not that we don't enjoy gaming anymore or that we've forgotten how to have fun. It's more like the weight of all those options start to overwhelm us. And when we're already exhausted, the thought of picking the wrong game can feel daunting. Now, let me take you back a little bit. When I was deep into Dota 2, I was part of this small group of friends who played often. For those of you who aren't familiar, Dota 2 is a game where every choice can make or break your team's success. Whether you're picking a hero, choosing a build, deciding when to push or when to defend, every decision carries a lot of weight. And when you're playing a game with a group, you feel this pressure to perform, to make the right calls, because the last thing you want is to be the one responsible for the loss. I remember this one night in particular. We just loaded into the game and I was struggling to pick my hero. My friends were locking in theirs and I could hear them strategizing on voice chat. I was scrolling through the heroes thinking, all right, we need someone tanky or maybe some good crowd control, or actually, should I go for a sneaky high damage hero and just blitz them? I couldn't decide. Every hero I considered just didn't feel like the right pick. And as the timer ticked down, I ended up just picking the first hero I saw. Totally random, totally unplanned. It wasn't the best choice, it wasn't what the team needed, and that match, well, it didn't go great. We lost pretty badly. But looking back, I realized that even though I made the wrong choice, at least I made a choice. Dota 2 taught me something important. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, you just have to go with your gut. You don't have the luxury of sitting back and analyzing every move. You've got to trust yourself and make decisions on the fly. And here's the thing. I think that lesson applies outside of games too. In real life, you rarely get all the time you want to sit and weigh every option. Sometimes you just have to trust your instincts and move forward, even if it feels like you're going in blind. When I look back at those Dota 2 matches, it wasn't always about making the perfect play. It was about committing to a decision and sticking with it. Because in Dota, if you hesitate, if you're caught second-guessing yourself mid-battle, you've probably already lost. Years later, and I still find myself falling into that trap of overthinking. When I finally get a free evening, I sit down, look at my library, and feel that same pressure creeping back. What's the best way to spend this time? What game will give me the most satisfaction? The truth is, by trying to pick the perfect game, I end up wasting time I could have used to actually relax. Here's a reminder I need to tell myself as often as possible, and maybe you do too. Stop putting so much pressure on your free time. If you're sitting there looking at your game library, feeling like you need to make it count, take a step back. It doesn't matter if you're not going to pick the perfect game. If there's one thing Dota taught me, it's that sometimes it's better to just make a choice and go with it. Even if it turns out to be a mediocre experience, it's still an experience, and you're not letting that time slip away unused. And let's be honest, there's no perfect way to unwind. If you find yourself scrolling through Netflix, watching YouTube, or browsing social media instead of gaming, that's okay too. Sometimes you just need to do whatever lets you decompress. Gaming doesn't have to be a productivity exercise where every minute has to be optimized for maximum fun. You're allowed to take it easy. That brings me to The Witcher 3, a game that many of us have heard praised as one of the best RPGs ever made. I played it back when it first came out, and I felt this immense pressure to experience it properly. I wanted to absorb every detail, see every quest, uncover every secret. But the more I tried to perfect my experience, the more I ended up feeling overwhelmed. It's such a massive game with so much depth, and the thought of missing something felt like a failure. Eventually, I got so bogged down in the details, I just kind of stopped playing. I walked away from it half finished. And that unfinished playthrough stayed in the back of my mind, like a nagging voice saying, "You really should go back and finish that, you know. You're missing out on this incredible experience." It was years later that I finally decided to revisit The Witcher 3. But this time I came at it from a completely different perspective. I wasn't worried about hitting every side quest or making the best choice. I just wanted to enjoy the journey, to play it because I wanted to, not because I felt pressured by the internet's collective opinion of it being a must play. And that second playthrough, it was so much better. I was playing at my own pace, making choices that felt right for me, and enjoying the game on my terms. No pressure, no need to do it right. I wasn't trying to reach some imaginary level of enjoyment or prove to myself that I could play it correctly. I just played it, and I enjoyed every second of it. So, the lessons I took from all of this: don't let yourself get paralyzed by the weight of choices. If you're staring at your game library, feeling guilty for not knowing what to pick, just go with whatever feels right at the moment. And if you end up changing your mind halfway through, that's okay too. Or even go back to an old favorite. The point is to enjoy it and recharge. After all, gaming should be fun, not another source of stress. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.